Japan and China are offloading their U.S. debt. Oh no! Oh no! Go back in time because they're concerned about Japan and China selling their debts. Here we are in 1997. What if Japan cashes in its U.S. bonds? Oh no! This is what the guy says. What if Japan starts selling their billions in U.S. government debt? Quite frankly, America's financial markets would collapse. Interest rate would mimic the early 1970s when borrowing costs were rising a percentage point a day. In fact, there'd be few buyers for all those bonds until rates became high enough to start draining money out of the stock market. Here's in 2005, Japan underwrites U.S. debt. The difference between Japan and American spending habits is playing out at the national level. While American trade and budget deficits have ballooned, Japan has been persistently tackling a trade surplus. Worried about a political backlash for taking away American jobs. They've taken our jobs. Meanwhile, Tokyo has been snatching up U.S. Treasuries, financing Americans' giant debt as Americans buy Japanese goods. There's Japan subsidizing U.S. debt in 2004. Experts warn that its current level of currency intervention will soon prove unsustainable. Japanese investors, mostly the government, bought a net $104 billion in U.S. debt from January to October. That's a third of the $314 billion issued during that period. If Japan stops buying as much U.S. debt, Washington and the private sector will have to pay more to borrow. The higher rates would force Washington to dedicate more resources to paying the interest on its debt, taking funds away from other programs and damping the economic recovery in Japan, in the United States. It has nothing to do with Japan, but right here, 1968, record U.S. debt. The national debt has climbed past the $350 billion mark for the first time. 1933, U.S. debt hits new high. The United States public debt increased $483 million during November to a total of $23 billion, a new peacetime high. Receipts during the month were $208 million. Ordinary expenditures were $205 million, but emergency expenditures for various phases of the recovery program were $293 million to make November's outlay, i.e. the deficit, that has nothing to do with Japan, $439 million. Here in the government spending increases new debt. U.S. debt, New Deal going to red twice as fast now as last year. 1998, Japan trims U.S. debt by $3 billion. Oh my goodness, Japan sold $3 billion, scaling back its total holdings to $318 billion. Japan owned 24.7% of all U.S. Treasury securities owned by foreigners. All right, so that's followed by Britain with about $300 million, so a billion. All right, so that's what I want to show you. So I've heard this story 1,000 times if I heard it once, and then we're just going to go to a little trading economics here. All right, so right here, all right, here's the debt to GDP. Remember Japan right there, 266% debt to GDP. Japan's inflation rate is only 3%. How could that possibly be when they have so much debt to GDP? They're running huge deficits, 12% deficit. Huge deficits. On top of the debt to GDP being almost 3 to 1, on top of inflation being low, they're running huge deficits as well. Crazy, huh? Yet interest rates are in negative territory. Crazy. How could that possibly be? All right, so if Japan were to sell its U.S. debt, what are they going to do with it? They're going to go buy Chinese 3.65% yields? No. Look at us, 3.25. We're 3.25. Anything else even close in any kind of economy that's worthwhile? Here's Euro area, 1.125. Here's Germany, 1.25. UK, 2.25. India, okay. I got no qualm with India, but I'm not buying India. I'm not selling American buying India. France, Italy, Canada, South Korea, no, nothing comes close. You're buying our debt because we're the best game in town. But our debt to GDP rate is 137%. Our current account is negative. Our government budget is negative. Oh my goodness, our jobless rate is 3.7. Japan's jobless rate is 2.6, and yet their inflation is still right here at 3. None of this is supposed to happen in economics. None of this is supposed to happen. All right, our inflation rate's high. So they're going to sell our debt to buy UK bonds? To buy their own bonds? And give themselves a negative interest rate? It doesn't work like that. All right, Let me show you something else. Total foreign owners of U.S. debt. China owns 1.18 trillion of U.S. debt. It's only 5.6% of total debt outstanding. Japan owns $1 trillion of U.S. debt. It's less than 5% of total debt outstanding. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Fiscal year 2018, nothing has changed. Who owns the U.S. debt? I can't see what that says. 40% of U.S. debt is owned by U.S. individuals and institutions. 12% is owned by, is that the U.S. military fund right there? So that's probably a TSP. 13% is owned by the Social Security Trust Fund. 10% is owned by the Federal Reserve. I mean, where's Japan? That light blue, is that it right there? I think that's Japan right there. Where's China? China right there, 6 points. So basically, Japan and China own 11% of our debt. It's just, here's the Federal Reserve. I can't tell which. Is that the Fed right there? Yeah, it's the Fed. I mean, can we stop this idea that Japan's going to sell their debt? What are they going to do? China's going to sell their debt. What are they going to do? We've been talking about this for years. Let me see if I can't go back to. Anyway, so I'd like for you to watch this episode of Wall Street Week before the crash. And it's what you're going to find here is you're going to find this guy right here, who's a managing director of some big Wall Street firm. They all talk about the budget deficits. They always talk about that, the trade imbalances. It's crazy to me. These guys have been so wrong for so long, and I don't understand. I mean, that doesn't mean they can't be. I mean, it's like Fauci. I mean, every now and again, Fauci's correct, which is you're like, whoa, Fauci's right? I can't believe it. You know what I'm saying? You know, because basically, if Fauci says go left, you know you want to go right. I mean, it's just a fact, man. If Fauci says it's raining out, you know it's probably sunny out, because everything the guy says, you have to go the opposite. But once in a while, you're surprised, like, wow, Fauci's right. The point being is no one knows anything. But just the brass tacks. If Japan were to dump their treasuries, and China were to dump their treasuries, what would they do? This is still the TINA economy. There is no alternative to the US of A. China ain't it. Japan's not it. At some point, India will probably be it. Russia's not it. They're getting ready to reelect Lula in Brazil, the socialist. He's not it. This is after, what's her name, Dilma. And Lula just got out of prison, man. You know what I'm saying? Now, right, whatever you want to say, South America isn't it in terms of our modern economy. Now, these other states and countries might be it in terms of a declining economy, but in terms of our modern economy, we are the only game in town. Forever will be for our lifetimes. It's just, there's no two ways around it. So I don't know. I sit there, I say, I cannot believe people are still saying this. I'm like, are these rookies at this stuff? Or are they just, I don't know what it is. It's, we're ignorant of history. Maybe a combination. Anyway, love your thoughts. We'll see you